Hello and welcome. My name is Leah Kopke. I'm a 3D motion design freelancer, and this is my podcast, Ambient 3D Animations. I'm so excited to go through all the volume mesher settings with you today. We've already covered all the settings for the volume builder, and we talked about materials for volumes and all kinds of fun things. So let's go ahead and jump into Cinema 4D and get started. So the really great thing about the volume mesher is it allows you to create meshes from any kind of volume, whether that's Pyro, a volume builder, or anything else really inside of Cinema 4D. As long as if it's a volume, you can do it, as long as if it's voxels. Here we are inside of Cinema 4D, and the very first thing I'll do is drop in a sphere. Now we need a volume to show as an example. So I'm going to change the sphere to be a volume using the volume builder. So I'll hold Alt with my sphere selected and click on the volume builder. And when I do that holding Alt, it allows the sphere, what I had selected, to be within the hierarchy of the object I'm adding into the scene. So now that I have this, you can see I have voxels in here. I can adjust the voxel size. I'm going to make it 1 just so that we have more detail, but when I do that, you can see that we can see the edges of our sphere. So we'll need to go ahead and correct that by adding in more segments. So that looks better. We can probably get away with a slightly larger voxel size. And that can also help smooth things out sometimes, especially when you turn this back into a mesh. So we're going to do something cool with this in a moment, but first I want to show you that if I hold Alt, the volume builder selected, and then I click on the volume mesher, it'll add the volume builder within the hierarchy of the volume mesher. So that's really important to have things within the correct hierarchy, because if it isn't, it won't work. So we'll go ahead and put that within there. We have 4 voxels for our size. And something that I'd just like to point out to you is that the SDF, or Sign Distance Field Volume Type, it uses layers to create, going to turn off the volume measure, to create the voxel. So you can see we have a layer of voxels. I'm inside of the volume builder right now. And if I go through here, you'll see that there's layers, and then we're on the outside again. Whereas fog, this volume type setting, it is not hollow, it is a volume through and through. That's why it's actually useful for things like fog. But why I'm showing you this is that this relates to the settings for the volume mesher. So if I turn the volume mesher back on, we can adjust the voxel range threshold. And this, if you're using fog, that will be using your minimum and maximum values for your voxels. So you can see it kind of takes away some mass and adds it in depending on this percentage here. If you are using the SDF, Sign Distance Field, it's doing something very similar, but instead it's using those voxel layers to remove and add in. Now this is pretty boring, it's just a sphere, so let's have some fun with this and instead add in a random field. So here we are, we have our random field in here. Let's go ahead and drop this within our volume builder. I'm going to select intersect, and you'll notice it kind of looks weird right now. Basically, the random field is applying a noise to the sphere, but why does it look so much like a cube? Well, it's because our creation space down here for our random field is a box, and we want it to be objects below so that we get that nice spherical shape. And now that we have that in here, we can make some further adjustments to our random field. And we can even make further adjustments to this voxel range threshold to get something really neat and cool. Now, I really like the look of the fog. So if you're using the fog, you can basically have this set to normal. You don't get the same intersect option here, but if you have it set to normal, it'll look right and it'll work. So now we have this in here, and we're going to talk about this. You can see adding and subtracting based on the min-max voxels for our fog. You can use absolute values and adjust this in here, and this is doing the same thing. It's just using numerical values for the voxels. And another really cool thing that I'd like to show you is this adaptive option. That's actually easier to show you on a cube, so I'm going to go ahead and drop in a cube, hold Alt, put in a volume builder, and let's make our voxel size something a little bit more interesting. Let's try 5. I'm going to move all of this on over, and I'm going to place it all within a volume measure. So the cool thing about this adaptive is that as you increase it, it adds polygons to curved areas more so. So it's a way to reduce your polygon count. Now there's this other really interesting setting here called Create Curvature Map. So I'll go ahead and click that on, and that actually applies to textures. And if you turn that on, it'll create a vertex map tag that has the information of the curvature of your object. You can choose convex, concave, or both. And you can turn this on and off, and you'll see that vertex tag comes and goes. Now, I think with a lot of new renders today, it's really easy to set this up in your materials rather than using this Create Curvature Map. So I'm going to go ahead and add in a Redshift Standard material as an option. Other renders like Octane also have a curvature node, and it's a very similar process. So in here, I'll go ahead and add in a material blender. So I'll drag and drop this in here, and I'll show you how this works. So we're actually going to blend two materials based on the curvature of the object, and I think it'll be easier to show it on this since this has so much detail to it. So I'm going to hit Control and create a copy. This one I'm going to make a very light color, and this one I'm going to make a dark purple so that we can see them pretty easily. And I'll add in what is called a curvature node here. And I can add in nodes by hitting this button here. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see what we're going to do now. So our curvature node is going to connect to our blend color. This is going to connect to our base material color. This will connect to our layer 1 material color. And you can see you can add quite a few layers in here. And then we'll connect this to our surface. So something that I like to do is actually add in a color correct. But you'll notice that if I actually add this to just the surface directly, and then add this to our object here, I can add in a sun and sky and hit render, adjust our intensity. You'll see that this actually creates some grayscale data, and that grayscale data can be used to determine where the material goes and to make worn edges on an object. So it's actually sensing where the curvature is and adjusting based on that. Now you'll see this isn't super detailed, so I'm actually going to lower my voxels. Be careful doing this because sometimes things can crash. Oh, I'm adjusting on my cube. I need to lower my voxels on this one. So now you can see that has a little bit more data, a little bit more polygons to work with here. And now you can see that it's sensing where those edges are a little bit more. You can adjust this further. You can adjust the radius size, the number of samples. You'll see that you have options convex, concave. I'm going to use convex for right now. It was lagging a little bit because I was rendering hitting so many buttons. But now that we have that, I want to show you something else you can use, because sometimes it can be difficult to adjust how this looks based on this curvature alone. Let's wait for the render to catch up so I can show what I mean. So here I wanted to show you what it looks like if I just render it as is, but you can actually go into your curvature and add in a color correct. So actually, if I were to drag and drop this right here, it'll add that in automatically. And then I can go ahead and adjust this further. I can adjust the contrast. I can adjust the gamma. And then you can begin to see that actually update within here. So if you want extra control, I strongly suggest giving that a try and using a color correct to adjust that further. That's about it for all the settings covering the volume measure. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit like and subscribe to see more content like this. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all of you and look forward to seeing you on the next episode.